different levels cause zoonosis among human beings. So, what are the driving factors for those diseases to cause to become a zoonosis? Why the outbreak of most of the diseases are taking place and it is originating from wild animals? So there are different reasons, and we'll discuss few of the reasons which are mainly concerned with the wildlife, like you know that with the increase in population we have our country. They have the highest, second largest uh, country in the world in terms of human population, second to the China. So we are growing very fast in terms of population, human population. They are growing very fastly, and most of our population they are residing in rural uh, setups where there is a close association between human and animals. So the country like us or the country who are under development stage, developing countries, they they have a huge demand of animal proteins and different animal products. So they are in very close contact with the animals as the socio-economic condition of the developing country or underdeveloped country. They are poor, so the exposure of uh, the pathogenic agents or microbes which are primarily in animals, they are more in such type of country. That's why the you will see the most of the diseases or most of the zoonotic outbreaks they are occurring in underdeveloping countries or in poor socio-economic background countries. Like in African countries, the most of the emergence of most of the zoonotic diseases are taking place. So because we have the 70% of human population which resides in rural setting and they live in close contact with the domestic as well as in wild animals, and that is the factor that leads to emergence of new diseases. So emerging diseases, you know what is the definition of emerging and re-emerging diseases? कोई बता सकता है anybody?
The disease which is newly evolved or newly recognized, you can say,
Yes.
is known as emerging, and री-इमर्जिंग डिजीज उसको कहेंगे जो कि पहले भी हो चुका है उसका occurrence, but वापस से
So
दोबारा.
emerging means they are evolving as a new pathogenic organism in a particular locality. It doesn't mean that this organism they have not emerged anywhere in the world. It might have emerged somewhere in some part of the world and it is emerging for the first time in a particular area. So that for that particular area it is called emerging. Or it may be for the first time in the whole world also, like for COVID-19. This has become the first disease for the whole human population. So this is also emerged. This is also an example of emerging diseases. So the disease can emerge or it can re-emerge also because of certain changes in the pathogens, like if there is a mutation in the genetic material of the pathogen, it can re-emerge. Okay. Or there might be an antibiotic resistance. So the bacterial disease which were controlled earlier, it can re-emerge due to antimicrobial resistance. So this may lead to emergence of new diseases in human population. Because we live in close contact with the domestic and wild animals, it will lead to more and more emergence of diseases. This shows that you see that 75% of emerging infectious diseases which are affecting human beings, they are primarily of wild animal origin. And there is another fact that 75% of infectious diseases reported in human beings, they are of zoonotic in nature. Means out of total infectious diseases reported in human beings, 75% of them are of zoonotic nature. They have some relation with the animals. They are coming from animal to human beings. And out of those, 75% of infectious, emerging infectious diseases, they are coming from wild animals. So wild animals, they are playing major role in the emergence of infectious diseases in human beings. There are different reasons for that fact because the, that wildlife they act as a reservoir for many type of infections or infectious agent which are not known for human population, and they remain in cycle in sylvatic cycle among the wild animals. So the wild animals, they host those organisms, and when human beings or domestic animals, they come in contact either direct or indirect with those wild animals, the pathogenic organism may jump to human beings or domestic animals. In this way, the organism can be transferred from wild animals or wild sources to domestic population. And from domestic population, it may reach to human population also. That is called the spilling of pathogens on human-animal interface. So human-animal interface is nothing, but it is the area where there is maximum contact of human animals, including wild animals, that takes place. So the place where human and animals they meet, they come together, they live in association. The species may jump from wild species to human beings or wild species to domestic animal species. And from domestic animal species, it may be transferred to the human beings. In this way, this cycle helps in the emergence of new diseases. See, for example, the uh, role of bats. Bats, they are not domestic. They do not live normally in contact or in the periphery of the human beings, human settings. Their habitat is forest. So if the forest is disturbed, the ecosystem is disturbed either by deforestation or by increased activity of humans in the forest area, there is a chance of contact of human and bats. If the forest is disturbed, if you do forest deforestation, what will happen? Their habitat will be destroyed and they will start moving towards the human dwellings, human settings, in search of food, in search of residence, in search of their nest. So what will happen? They start coming towards the human population, towards the domestic population, and they start shedding the infectious agent residing in their body, because they may act as a reservoir for so many types of infectious diseases which are not known to human population. So once they start shedding, and the viruses or bacteria, whatever it may be, they 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 are coming in close contact with the human beings or domestic animals, and slowly they adopt to the human body or domestic animal body. They start adopting and start infecting the human cells. In that way, the organism emerged for human beings. So, say for example, the COVID-19, what happens with the COVID-19? Because this is not new virus, this is simply a coronavirus. And coronavirus, this particular virus, it was supposed to be causing, or it was supposed to be in the bats. So bats, they act as a reservoir for so many viruses, and coronavirus is also one of them, one of those viruses. So when bat they came in contact either to any other animals, like it was supposed that pangolins, they are also wild animals. So the bat virus, they are transferring the virus to the pangolins, and from pangolins, the disease was transferred to human beings because the humans, they are involved in the poaching of pangolins, or they were involved in consumption of meat from pangolins. So what happened after a period of time, after a gap of period of time, these virus adopted to the human cells, and they started affecting, or you can say transmitting among human to human, and that leads to emergence of new virus in human population that was called COVID-19, coronavirus, corona infection virus 19. So that is the way a virus may evolve to new host. This virus was not known for other hosts, but it has evolved in a period of time and started causing disease in human beings. It may also causing disease in other animals, but it is not reported. The study is going on. So it is not mandatory that the virus is only affect human beings. It may also affect other animals also. And that is the area of research. We can find out the viruses in other hosts also. So that leads to emergence of diseases in that says the role of wildlife in emergence of new zoonotic diseases. These are some of the factors that we have discussed, like deforestation. We do deforestation, the wildlife habitat or ecosystem will be destroyed, and the wild animals, they will start moving towards the domestic population. That will lead to emergence of new disease. The intensified agriculture and livestock production. This is also one of the most important factors that leads to, because we need to satisfy our demand, and for that we do intensified livestock farming. And this intensified livestock farming may pose a risk for the transfer of diseases from animals to human beings. Okay. Illegal and poor regulated wildlife trade. That is also one of the reasons that we have seen in China in case of COVID-19. In Wuhan, there is a practice of slaughter of wildlife for meat purposes. So that leads to close association between wildlife and human beings, and that has led to emergence of new diseases. So illegal and poorly regulated wildlife trade is one of the most important reasons for emergence of diseases of wildlife origin in human beings. Okay. Climate change, that is also one of the very burning factor nowadays. Due to change in the climate, the habitat is disturbed, the ecosystem is disturbed, and the pattern of disease is shifting. So the cooler weather is now shifting into hotter weather. So what happens? The type of infectious or the type of pathogens, they are also changing due to change in environmental temperature, and that leads to emergence of new diseases. Say, for example, as I told many times that if the temperature changes, the vector also change, and type of pathogen they also change, and that change in the pathogen and vector leads to emergence of new disease for a particular area. Say, for example, if in Kashmir the temperature goes on increasing, the pathogens which were not reported in Kashmir due to cold climate, they will start reporting in Kashmir also due to increased temperature. So that will lead to emergence of diseases in that particular area. So that's how this type of shift in the disease pattern also takes place due to climatic change. Antimicrobial resistance, I told you that due to development of resistance, the re-emergence of disease takes place. So that is also a factor which leads to re-emergence of infectious diseases, which may be of zoonotic in nature. Spillover of potential pathogen to unusual host. Usually, the host is fixed for different types of pathogenic organisms. And those hosts, they are called reservoir host. The pathogen usually do not cause any disease in those reservoir hosts. But when there is jump of a species, when these pathogens, they jump to another type of host, it may cause disease in those hosts. So that is called spilling over of pathogens. So it is spill over from one species to another species, and it may cause disease in different animal in human beings. That will lead to emergence of new disease. That's why spillover of potential pathogen to unusual host is also one of the factor. And with the help of these figures, you can say that if you are involved in the consumption of, say, wild animals, the pathogens residing in these wild animals, they may be transferred to human beings. See here, the peoples, they are involved in the trading of bats. So the pathogen which are residing in the bats may jump to the human beings, and it may be fatal for human beings. So that these type of practices usually leads to the emergence of new pathogens from wild animals. Why we are stressing about the wild animals? Because wild animals usually they do not come in contact with the human beings. They have their separate ecosystem and they maintain their cycle in their own ecosystem. But if we disturb their ecosystem or if we try to infiltrate into their ecosystem, the pathogen may also jump from those hosts to human beings. And that's why the role of wildlife is becoming important as we are infiltrating more and more in the wildlife ecosystem. That's why we are seeing more and more type of wildlife diseases in human beings. Today only I have seen there is a report of this um, this new virus in Kerala. There is this virus was reported in Kerala.
Zika
Why?
virus.
Which one?
Zika virus.
Zika virus, yes. So Zika virus, this has been reported in Kerala. Why it is reported in Kerala only? Because there is more forest area in Kerala and people they are traveling more and more into the forest area. That may be one of the reason. That's why it is being reported in those particular area only. In southern part of the India, the number of forest, the area of forest is more, and that may be one of the reasons. That's why the new type of diseases they are reported in southern part of the country, like in Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. These are the states where these type of diseases they are reported very frequently. That may be one of the reason, not only the reason. There can be other reasons also for emergence of such type of diseases. There is also a reason that there is fast movement and trade of animal and animal products in those areas, or the fast mode of travel. People they are traveling very fastly from one country to another country. That may also lead to emergence of new type of diseases. This is an example, typical example of Nipah virus. So the Nipah virus, this disease was reported in India also, and usually this virus they do not cause disease in human beings. It was not reported earlier, but it was reported due to destroyed habitat. You can see in the picture that the human beings they are destroying the wildlife area. They are involved in deforestation and burning of forest area. So what will happen due to burning of the forest area? These bats they start moving towards the human settings, and when once it has started to the human area, it has also transmitted the disease to human beings, either through directly or through with the help of some some domestic animals. So in case of Nipah virus, what happened? There was severe deforestation in Southeast Asia, and it was coupled with smoke, haze from the slash and burn activities. So because of developmental work, the forest area was cut and was burned. So due to burn activity, what happened? Smoke and this type of hazy material they have developed, and it caused the fruit bats to leave their natural area, which are acting as a natural reservoir for Nipah virus. So bat again, they act as a natural reservoir for Nipah virus. And these bats, they moved from forest area to cultivated fruit orchard where pig farmings were done by human beings. So these bats, they moved from jungle to those pig farm, and it has transmitted the disease to the pigs. So it was first transmitted to the pigs, and from pigs, this was transmitted to the human beings through their discharges or when we come in contact with the pigs. See in this picture, you can visualize it that the bats, they are moving from forest area to the human dwellings, and they have transmitted the disease to the pigs, and from among the pigs, the disease started transmitting from pig to pig, pig to pig. So pig, whole pig farm, they become infected, and the person involved in the piggery, they were exposed and they caught the disease from the pigs. Once it came to the human beings, it has caused. It may be transmitted from one human to another human. So that is the way this disease has transmitted. It was not earlier recorded in human beings, but when we involve in such type of activity, these viruses may jump from wild animals to the human settings, human beings. The same thing happened with SARS and MERS also. SARS means severe acute respiratory syndrome. So this was again caused by the SARS. This was again caused by the coronavirus, type of coronavirus. And again, the reservoir of this virus was the bats. Also from the bats, it was transmitted to civet cat. This is also a wild animal. So these civet cats were, when they came in contact with the human beings, the disease was transmitted to the humans. So this is the cycle, or this is the way in which this SARS virus was transmitted to the human beings and caused epidemic of SARS in China. Okay. Similarly, the MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, this was again caused by the coronavirus, and this time this coronavirus they have modified, and again they have the origin were the same, that is the bats. So the virus was transmitted from bats to the camels, and they were circulating among the camels. When the human they came in contact with these infected camels, the disease was transmitted to the human beings. So you see, the main culprit is not camel or the civet cat. The main culprit is the bats or human beings. They are coming indirectly in contact with these bats with the help of these intermediate hosts, and that leads to transmission of disease in human beings. Okay. Similarly, the COVID-19, I told you that these pangolins, they are supposed to be intermediate host for human beings for this virus SARS-CoV-2, because the sequence of the genetic material of the virus, which was recovered from pangolin and human beings, they were found very, very similar. And especially the ACE2 receptor sequence, because this virus, they bind with the ACE2 receptor of the human beings. So these receptors were found very similar in case of pangolin virus and this COVID-19 virus. That's why it was assumed that probably these pangolins, they got infection from the this bat, and from pangolin it came to the human beings. Okay? And that once it came to the human beings, the virus adapted in the human beings, and it has developed the potential to transmit among human to human. That leads to pandemic in human beings. Similarly, the virus can happen with the avian influenza also. So again, here we are lucky enough till today that the virus are not transmitting from one human to another human. There are reports that this avian influenza virus H5N1, they have been transmitted from domestic birds to the human beings, but one human to another human, till date it has not been reported. So the time when the virus starts moving among human beings, that will cause another pandemic in the human beings. So, and that time is not too far. We can see next pandemic of avian influenza in the coming 5 to 10 years. So we have to take care. We have to change our practice, our culture, that should minimize the contact with such type of animals, because this avian influenza virus H5N1, it has not been originated from domestic birds, but the main origin is the waterfowl, or you can say the wild birds, from where this was transmitted to the ducks, and from ducks it was transmitted to the domestic birds, poultry, and from poultry it is transmitted to pigs and human beings. Okay. So if we are in more and more contact with such type of wild birds or domestic animals, we are at more risk. That's why it is said that poultry piggery setup should not be in close association with the human settings, because it may lead to emergence of many type of diseases, not only avian influenza. Pigs, they are acting as a mixing vessel for many type of infections. Like you can say, it acts as a amplifier host for Japanese encephalitis also. It acts as a mixing vessel for avian influenza. It acts as a mixing